All right, are we recording? Awesome. Hey everyone, my name is Austin, and welcome back to another episode of the Unfiltered Faith Podcast. If you're just tuning in for the first time, I'm so glad you're here, and I would encourage you to check out my previous episodes. If you've been here, I'm so glad you're tuning in as well. And today's episode was supposed to be about the nuanced distinction between loneliness and solitude, but today I wanted to shift gears for a moment and talk about something really personal to me, my stutter. If you're listening to my if you've listened to my podcast before, you probably notice some stuttering occasionally. But to tell you the truth, sometimes it's a lot worse than what you're hearing. A lot of my listeners already knew that. So this is for those that don't. Kind of like an introduction podcast, like you're just meeting me for the first time. I spend a lot of time editing my videos to give you guys the best quality content I can give, even if that means editing out the awkward pauses, words, or phrases that I say multiple times, or even weird sounds that come out of my mouth that aren't quite words. W- One take all the way through. This is my real and unfiltered self. For the past two episodes, I've been stepping on a soapbox and I've been talking about the importance of being our real, authentic, and unfiltered selves, but I haven't exactly been practicing what I preach. It is time I started. So, for this episode, and maybe more episodes in the future, I'm not going to edit this episode, but you guys let me know if I should or not. I'm obviously going to make sure my podcast has the best quality audio for you guys, but I won't mess with the audio by trimming or deleting any clips. Every awkward long pause, every repeated word or phrase, you guys are going to have front row VIP seats to the truest, most authentic form of myself as it gets. So, what is stuttering? Stuttering for me, it's not just about the words that come out of my mouth. It's a complex mix of physical, psychological, and emotional factors. On a physical level, it involves disruption in the flow of speech. It can feel like my brain is racing ahead while my mouth is just isn't cooperating. Frustrating, right? I mean, can you imagine being a kid and feeling like you can't talk because you're in a constant battle with your speech? It made social interactions almost impossible. Let me paint you guys a picture of how my experience with stuttering has influenced me and shaped my relationships. I was severely I was severely bullied for stuttering. I remember when I was a kid, other kids would often try to guess what I was going to say, like it was some kind of game show, like Family Feud and The Price is Right. Most of the time, they wouldn't even guess what I was saying correctly. People still do that to this day, and I'm 25 years old. For all of my listeners out there, does anyone remember Windows 98? Well, for the hosts who don't and are too young, Windows 98 was a really slow computer system. Does anyone remember the spinning wheel of death? Classmates of mine would often come up to me and do that same circular motion with their finger in front of my face and chant buffering, buffering, buffering over and over. I w- I wasn't popular at all in school. Sure, I knew a lot of people's names and people knew me, but just because you know a lot of people doesn't mean you're popular. It just means you're extroverted. I mean, one time as a joke, my so-called best friend dragged me over to one of the most popular girls in the grade and asked her who she had to go on a date with. She picked me because at least there wouldn't be much of a conversation. After all, I'd be stuttering the whole time, or or at least that's what she said. I'd often avoid raising my hand in class, sticking to the sidelines during recess, and just wishing I could blend in the background. I felt different, and honestly, it felt pretty isolating. Each day presents a new challenge with moments of confidence and fluent speech, contrasted by times of struggle and emotional turbulence. Stuttering has been a constant presence in my life, since childhood, stemming from a brain disorder known as epilepsy. I vividly recall the anxiety and dread I felt in elementary school when called upon to speak, as my words often refused to flow as I intended. This experience goes beyond mere speech difficulties, delving into deeper emotional and psychological complexities. My journey with stuttering has significantly impacted my life, and I believe it's essential to share it, offering support to others facing similar challenges. It's crucial to recognize that stuttering is just one of the facet of my identity. It does not define who I am. Embracing my stutter has taught me valuable lessons in resilience, patience, and empathy, shaping me into the person I am today. Understanding the interplay of genetic and cognitive factors has been a significant part of my journey and accepting my stutter as a part of my identity. Stuttering not only affects my speech, but also influences my social interactions, creating an invisible barrier at times. The struggle to articulate thoughts and express myself coherently can be draining and emotionally taxing. At times, it feels like my mind races ahead while my speech lags, leading to moments of frustration and mental fatigue. As I got older, I realized that my stutter was shaping my identity in ways I didn't fully understand at the time. I became this mix of wanting to connect with others and being terrified of judgment. I learned that sometimes people would look at me with pity or even impatience, and that stung. It reinforced his idea that I was somehow less of a person because of my speech. Now don't get me wrong, it's still a challenge. There are days when I feel frustrated. There are days when I want to throw in the towel and just avoid speaking altogether. For example, when I was recording episode 2, The Art in Finding Happiness in the Unlikely, part 2, I must have recorded that episode 10 different times or somewhere in that realm, and I was still unsatisfied with what I published. That's just how it is sometimes. I've learned to take it in stride. I remember I remind myself that it's okay to stutter, that it doesn't make me any less capable of connecting with others or sharing my thoughts. If anything, makes me it it makes more people want to listen and pay attention to what I'm saying. So if you're listening and you're someone who stutters, know that you're not alone. Your voice matters even if it doesn't come out the way you want it to at all. And if you're someone who doesn't stutter, I encourage you to be patient and understanding. We're all just trying to communicate in a world that sometimes feels a bit rushed. Ultimately, stuttering has taught me that vulnerability can lead to connection. It's opened doors to deeper conversations and authentic relationships. But here's the thing. I've found a way to channel those feelings into something constructive. Art. Art in its many forms has become not just an outlet for me, but a lifeline. Whether it's music, writing, or painting, creativity allows me to express my feelings that sometimes get tangled up in my throat. For example, when I write, I can take my time. I can edit, revise, and craft my words until they feel just right. It's as if I'm giving my stutter a voice through the writing. Music is such a powerful force for me. When I listen to songs that resonate with my experiences, it feels like my struggles are being validated. The rhythm and melody become my allies, helping me find my voice in a way that feels safe and free. Now, let's chat about the therapeutic benefits of creativity for mental health. Engaging in artistic pursuits can serve as a release. It's like a pressure valve, letting out all those pent-up feelings of frustration, anxiety, and even joy. I found that when I immerse myself in creative activities, I'm not just expressing what I feel about my stutter, I'm also nurturing my mental well-being. There's something incredibly healing about putting pen to paper, brush to canvas, or fingers to piano keys. It's a way to explore my emotions without the fear of judgment. It's a space where I can feel completely unfiltered, just like this podcast. Who sees stuttering affects me more than just communication. It weaves its way into my daily life, my interactions, and even my self-esteem. There's this constant battle in my head, a tug of war between wanting to express myself and fear of how my speech will be perceived. And let me tell you, that fear can be crippling. My stutter affects me daily, how I communicate, how I connect with others, and sometimes even how I see myself. Yeah, it can feel like a roller coaster ride and not always the fun kind. But beyond that, the stuttering has this emotional weight. It can bring on anxiety, especially in social situations or when I'm trying to express myself or something important. And I'll be real with you. There are moments when I feel like I'm fighting a battle just to say my name. I've come across people who say things to me like, "Did you forget your name?" And asked what my name was, then proceeded to quote unquote get stuck, as I'd like to call it. That's not easy, folks. Anxiety is a big player here. Imagine standing in front of a group of people, your heart racing, palms sweating, and you just wanted to get your words out, but your brain and your mouth just don't sync up. It's frustrating, and that anxiety doesn't just stop when the speech is over. It lingers, creating this cloud of self-doubt that makes you question your worth and your ability to communicate effectively. Now, let's talk about the workplace. The workplace where communication is key and the pressure is on. I've faced challenges there too. Sometimes it feels like my stutter makes me feel less credible or capable in the eyes of my colleagues. I've had moments where I've hesitated to speak up in meetings, fearing judgment or misunderstanding. But I've also found allies, people who have supported me, who've encouraged me to share my thoughts, and who've helped create an inclusive environment. And then there's self-esteem. I know I'm not alone in this, but my stutter can take a hit on how I see myself. It can make me feel less like you're not good enough to share your thoughts. When I was younger, I often avoided situations where I might have to speak up. I still do, if I'm being completely honest. Group projects in school? No thanks. Public speaking, I would rather watch this year's Super Bowl. Speaking of public speaking, let's talk about it. How many people, for many people, it's a terrifying experience. But someone who stutters, it can feel like standing in front of a firing squad. Yeah, you've got this intense pressure to perform, to articulate, and to not let your stutter define you. And when you're up there, the fear of judgment from others can feel overwhelming. That being said, I can remember a time when public speaking wasn't so bad. I was a senior in high school, and I had to take a speech class to graduate. At my old school, speech was a senior level class, hence why I hadn't taken it yet. I was in a class full of freshmen and sophomore, so not only did I feel nervous because of my stutter, but I also felt nervous because I was the oldest one in the classroom amongst my peers, because I felt like I had to perform better than the rest of them. I remember after class, I stayed behind it to ask my teacher if I could give my presentation to him after class or something. Still willing to do the work, but eliminating the stress of having 60 plus eyes staring at me. After hearing my proposal, he made me a deal. He said, I have no problem with you doing your hesitations after class with just me because of your stutter or whatever, but I want you to at least try your first presentation in front of the class. And if you hate it, yeah, you don't have to do it anymore. I was hesitant, but I agreed to his counteroffer. I gave my first speech sometime later. I felt like the silence in the room was so deafening after my speech. I could hear a pin drop. I look back at my teacher, and he had a big grin on his face. And he said, at the beginning of the semester, Austin came to me after class expressing a concern that he had about speaking in front of you guys. He said he didn't want to present in front of you guys because of his stutter. He then asked the class who thought Austin did a great job on his speech. That question was followed by every single student in that classroom clapping. Needless to say, I presented every one of my speeches in front of the entire class that semester. But here's the thing. I've learned that my speech doesn't define who I am. It's a part of me. Yes, it doesn't dictate my worth. If you had told younger me I was doing a podcast, I would have laughed in your face. But at the beginning of this year, I wanted to challenge myself by stepping out of my comfort zone and doing something I never thought I was capable of doing. That was my first mistake. Never let anyone tell you that you're not incapable of doing something. Because if you are determined enough, then you'll make it happen. I even surprised myself. I've worked hard to find ways to manage the anxiety and boost my self-esteem. I've had to remind myself that everyone has their own struggles, and stuttering is just one of mine. I want you all to remember that our imperfections make us unique. Whether it's a stutter, a quirk, or something else entirely, it's okay to embrace it. Some days it's easier to embrace it than others, but it doesn't define me. I've come to understand that my stutter is just one part of who I am. Not only does it take an insane amount of patience on the receiving end, but you also have to remember that I also need to have incredible amount of patience with myself. There are occasions that I'll try to talk and it doesn't go as planned. I get really angry with myself, which only makes it worse. But the fact of the matter is, I'm my own biggest enemy. We all are. What would happen if instead of us being our own worst enemies, we were our own biggest cheerleaders? Now let's talk about how society perceives people who stutter. Now, stuttering is something that affects many people. It's often shrouded in misunderstanding. There's a lot of stigma out there. Many people think that stuttering is a sign of nervousness or lack of intelligence, and that's just not true. I've met some incredibly intelligent, and articulate people who happen to stutter. It's frustrating to say the least. One common misconception is that we're not good communicators. But let me tell you, I've had some amazing conversations with people, stutter and all. It's about the message, not just the delivery. And I think that sometimes we all need to remember that. Another stereotype is that people who stutter are shy or introverted. That couldn't be far from the truth. I'm actually quite extroverted, and I love connecting with people. It's just something, it's just sometimes my stutter gets in the way. So if you're listening and you know someone who stutters, don't assume they're shy. Just engage with them like you would with anyone else. I've also encountered people who feel uncomfortable when I stutter. They might look away or even try to finish my sentences for me. I get it. It can be awkward, but I wish people would just relax and let me take my time. We're all humans, right? We all have our quirks and challenges. So, what can we do about this? Well, it starts with awareness and education. Talk to people, ask questions. Don't shy away from the topic because it feels uncomfortable. I think we avoid awkward and uncomfortable conversations because, well, it makes us feel awkward and uncomfortable. The more we discuss stuttering openly, the less stigma there will be. If you're someone who stutters, know you're not alone. If you know someone who stutters, be patient and supportive. Listen to them. Let them express themselves in their own way. At the end of the day, I want to encourage everyone to embrace their unique challenges, whatever they may be. Stuttering is just part of my story, and it has shaped who I am in profound ways. I've learned to advocate for myself and to stand up for what I believe in, and to never let my stutter hold me back from pursuing my dreams. But here's the thing, despite these challenges, I've learned to cope. It's taken time and a lot of practice. I celebrate my victories, big and small, like when I can speak fluently in a meeting or when I manage to share my thoughts without feeling overwhelmed. Those moments remind me that I'm not defined by my stutter. Instead, it's just a part of my journey. And let's not forget, finding supportive spaces is vital. Surrounding myself with understanding people has made a huge impact, whether it's friends, family, or even support groups. Having a community it that gets it makes the journey so much easier. So if you're out there and you're dealing with a stutter or any form of communication challenge, I urge you to find your creative outlet. It doesn't even have to be a form of a communication challenge. It can be anything you're dealing with in life. The bottom line is that feeling that finding a creative outlet to deal with the frustrations of everyday challenges has been a lifesaver for me. Don't be afraid to explore music, writing, painting, or whatever speaks to you. It's not just about making art, it's about making sense of your world, your feelings, and your experiences. So here's my takeaways for anyone listening. Whether you stutter or not, we all have our unique challenges. It's okay to seek help and explore different avenues. What works for one person may not work for another, and that's completely fine. It's about finding your own rhythm and being comfortable with who you are. I want to encourage everyone to be kind to themselves, to embrace their journeys, and to never be afraid of sharing their stories. Stuttering may affect me, but it doesn't define my worth. Remember, communication is just about the words we say. It's about connection, expression, and understanding. So thanks for tuning in today and for letting me share my thoughts on this topic. I hope it sparks something in you and maybe even encouraged someone else out there. If you know someone who stutters, reach out to them. If you stutter yourself, remember you're not alone and your voice matters. As we wrap up today's episode, remember that stuttering or whatever type of challenge you face doesn't define you as a person. It's a part of your journey, but it's not your whole story. What does define you is how you choose to deal with these challenges. People are always going to look at you and treat you like you're different, and unfortunately, that's just human nature. People are always going to look at you like you're some kind of animal at the zoo. The point is, people are always watching, no matter who you are. So are you going to give them something to look at, mock, and make fun of, or are you going to be the difference in their lives, speak up, and show them that you're no different from them? I choose to use my voice to express who I am and to inspire others along the way. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you found something relatable or inspiring in today's conversation. I, I hope by sharing my experiences, I can help someone out there feel a little less alone. So, to anyone out there who's struggling with stuttering or any form of communication challenges or any other challenges for that matter, remember you're not alone. Celebrate your victories, embrace your journey, and keep finding ways to communicate effectively. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone who might benefit from it. Until next time, stay creative and keep expressing yourself in whatever way feels right for you.